the son of one of Britain's wealthiest men, was blind. They told Clara Bennett that little Ethan Moore had been born without sight, that no treatment existed, that no doctor could explain it. They told her not to ask questions, to simply accept what she was told. But Clara Bennett had never been the kind of woman who accepted anything without looking deeper, and what she would soon uncover inside that glass mansion would shatter every lie and save the future of an innocent child. Her old Mini Cooper came to a slow stop before the wrought iron gates of the Glasswood Estate, its massive glass walls gleaming under the early sun like something made of ice and light. The house was magnificent, so perfect it felt wrong. Clara sat still behind the wheel, watching the gates slide open in silence. The morning air was sharp and cold, carrying the faint scent of roses and steel. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady, eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by beauty. She was 29, a former pediatric nurse who had spent 5 long years in hospital corridors. She'd learned how to read the silent language of children in pain and how to recognize the lies of adults. One child in particular haunted her, a 3-year-old girl who died from abuse while her file sat ignored in an office inbox. That day, Clara walked away from the hospital, vowing never again to stay silent when her instincts warned her that a child was in danger. Becoming a nanny felt safer, gentler. She thought she was leaving the darkness behind. She was wrong. A man's controlled voice spoke through the intercom. "Please, come in, Miss Bennett." The gates opened, and her car rolled along a pristine gravel path, bordered by symmetrical hedges and roses so flawless they seemed artificial. Even the air felt manicured. Everything here was too perfect, and the perfection itself made her uneasy. That old familiar instinct, cold, quiet, certain, stirred inside her chest. She parked in front of the entrance just as the massive door swung open. A tall man stepped into the light. Early 40s, sharp navy suit, silver at his temples. Every movement was composed, practiced, deliberate. His gray eyes carried a quiet, tired sadness. Daniel Moore. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," he said, his tone polite but heavy. "Our previous nanny had to leave suddenly. My son Ethan needs someone who can start immediately." Clara nodded. "I'm happy to help, Mr. Moore." He gave a small, almost mechanical smile. "Ethan is special. I hope you'll be patient with him." Inside, the house gleamed like a museum. The marble floors mirrored the chandelier that hung from a 3-story ceiling. Every corner shone, every surface spotless. There was no sound of life, no toys, no laughter, no trace of a child. "It's beautiful," Clara murmured. "It's peaceful," Daniel replied, but his voice sounded like an apology. As they walked through the corridor, Clara noticed security cameras glinting in nearly every corner. Daniel caught her glance. "Just for safety," he said. She smiled politely, but the unease deepened. He stopped before a white door and opened it. Light spilled out. The room was soft, pastel, mint, cream, gray. On the rug near the window sat a little boy, surrounded by tactile toys, braille books, and a worn stuffed bear. He had golden curls, pale skin, and dark glasses far too large for his face. "Ethan," Daniel said gently. The boy turned his head toward the sound, slow and uncertain. "Son, this is Clara. She'll be staying with you." Clara knelt down, her voice low and tender. "Hi, Ethan. I'm Clara. I'm really happy to meet you." There was a long pause. Then a small hand reached out, feeling through the air until it found hers. "Are you kind?" he asked softly. his voice hoarse and far too weary for a 5-year-old. Clara squeezed his hand gently. I'll try to be," she whispered, and her voice trembled despite herself. She wasn't sure if it was pity, instinct, or something darker whispering beneath the surface. Daniel stood silently, the light from the window outlining the quiet sorrow in his face. When he finally left, Clara stayed, her gaze drifting across the immaculate room. Everything was in its place. Everything was untouched. A room built for display, not for living. She inhaled slowly, eyes lingering on the boy's dark glasses. The air felt too still, too precise, too managed. And in that blinding brightness, Clara knew with absolute certainty something in this house was terribly, irreversibly wrong. Clara's first morning at the Glasswood Estate began in absolute silence. No birdsong, no distant cars, only the steady ticking of a wall clock echoing through a kitchen so spotless it looked sterile. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, dazzling, harsh, almost artificial, like the house itself was trying too hard to keep darkness away. Standing by the sink, stirring her first cup of coffee, Clara felt a chill crawl up her spine despite the perfect warmth of the room. Ethan was still asleep upstairs. She heard light footsteps from the hallway, and then Victoria Moore appeared. No greeting, no small talk, just presence. Cold, commanding, deliberate. Victoria was in her mid-30s, with sleek dark hair that gleamed like glass, makeup polished to precision, and a silk gray dress that whispered wealth at every movement. A Cartier watch glinted on her wrist. Every detail of her appearance was curated, like the rest of this house. "You must be Miss Bennett?" The voice was soft, but carried authority like a blade. "Yes, Mrs. Moore," Clara replied quietly. "Daniel mentioned you were once a pediatric nurse. I hope that means you understand the importance of discipline." The word lingered in the air like a warning, not a compliment. Victoria moved closer, smiling with her lips, but not her eyes. "I don't need you getting too attached to Ethan. He has special needs, and I am the only one who understands them. Your job is to follow instructions exactly as given." She opened a drawer and pulled out a neatly folded paper, placing it on the marble counter. "These are the household rules. I suggest you read them carefully." Clara unfolded the list. "Ethan is not to be taken outside without my explicit permission. No one but me handles his eye drops. Meals, lessons, and rest follow the exact schedule provided. Do not ask questions about his medical condition. Do not enter my or Daniel's rooms without invitation." The handwriting was elegant, almost artistic, but cold, mechanical. Clara raised her eyes. "I understand, Mrs. Moore, but if I'm to care for Ethan properly, may I review his prescriptions or medical notes, just to be sure I'm doing things correctly?" The smile vanished. "That won't be necessary. The doctors have given me full guidance. You just do your part." Too fast, too smooth, too defensive. Clara felt a knot tighten in her chest. "Of course," she murmured. Victoria's tone softened, falsely sweet. "Good. Ethan needs stability, and I won't tolerate curiosity. The last nanny had trouble following boundaries. She's no longer with us." Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor as she left, each step echoing like a closing door. When the kitchen was silent again, Clara realized she'd been holding her breath. She exhaled slowly, reading the list once more. No touching, no questions, no freedom. A rule book that looked less like guidance and more like a cage polished to perfection. Minutes later, Ethan came downstairs for breakfast. He sat quietly at the table, small hands folded neatly. The black sunglasses still covered half his pale face. Clara placed a bowl of oatmeal and warm milk in front of him. "Good morning, Ethan," she said gently. "Good morning," he replied softly. "Mrs. Victoria said I can't go outside today." "Oh? Do you like staying inside?" Clara asked lightly. He shook his head, gripping his spoon. "I like listening to the birds, but she says the noise makes me tired." The words stung. Clara's eyes drifted to the glass walls, to the garden beyond, so close, so alive, yet forbidden. The sunlight was everywhere, and yet this house felt trapped in shadow. All morning, Clara kept Ethan company during his lessons. He was quiet, obedient, almost unnervingly calm. But something about his movements drew her attention. He didn't stumble. He seemed to know exactly where each object was, reaching without hesitation. Once he touched a nearby table before walking toward his toys, but his steps were straight, confident, precise, almost visual. Her pulse quickened. Then she told herself not to overthink. Maybe he'd memorized the layout. Maybe it was coincidence. Still, a whisper of doubt pressed at the back of her mind. Something doesn't add up. That afternoon, Victoria entered the room, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. Her smile returned, flawless and cold. "Ethan, it's time for your medicine." She pulled a small amber bottle from her purse. No label, no prescription, and with practiced ease tilted Ethan's chin and dropped liquid into his eyes. The motion was clinical, rehearsed, too smooth. Clara stood nearby, forcing herself to stay still. Her instincts screamed, but her reason said wait, not yet. When Victoria finished, she glanced at Clara, her tone honeyed but sharp. "See? I handle his treatment. As long as we respect boundaries, we'll get along perfectly." And then she left, leaving behind the faint trace of expensive perfume and suffocating control. Clara knelt beside Ethan to adjust his blanket. His voice came so quietly, she almost thought she imagined it. "Miss Clara, do you believe I'm really blind?" She froze. The world around her went still. The ticking clock stopped mattering. Light streamed through the window, bouncing off the glass, filling the room with brilliance so intense it almost burned. And in that blinding glow, Clara understood. Light didn't always mean truth. Clara didn't sleep that night. Ethan's quiet question echoed in her head, haunting and fragile. "Miss Clara, do you believe I'm really blind?" She didn't know how to answer. His voice, soft and uncertain, carried both fear and something deeper, like a child beginning to doubt the truth he'd been told. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, pale light slipping through the curtains, tracing thin, cold lines across the room. Beneath the estate's perfection, she could feel it, something alive, restless, dangerous, moving beneath the silence. Morning came too calm, too quiet. Victoria had left early for a charity event. Daniel was at work. For the first time, the house belonged to just her and Ethan. No cameras she could see in the playroom. No hovering presence of Victoria's perfume. Clara decided to spend the morning simply being with the boy, playing, observing, learning him the way a nurse learns a pulse. The playroom faced east, bathed in gentle light. Ethan sat cross-legged on the rug, surrounded by tactile toys. Wooden blocks, rubber animals, a few soft, worn things that looked almost too carefully chosen. Clara knelt beside him. "So, what should we play today?" she asked. Ethan tilted his head, a small smile flickering beneath his dark glasses. "Airplanes. I like airplanes." "Airplanes? Perfect." She picked up a small silver model, its wings a little chipped. "I used to love these too. When I was little, I wanted to fly away somewhere far." She tied a string to the toy, twirling it gently through the air. The soft whir of plastic filled the room. Ethan turned his head toward the sound, his expression lighting up. "Where is it now?" "Right here," Clara said, laughing. For a while, the room came alive with something new. Laughter, the soft rhythm of play, the warmth of a child's joy that had been missing for too long. And then, it happened. The string snapped. The tiny airplane dropped from the air, soundless, too light to make a thud, too quick for reflexes. And yet, Ethan's hand shot out, swift, precise, and he caught it mid-air. Time stopped. Clara froze, breath trapped in her throat, eyes locked on the small hand gripping the toy. It was impossible. The room was silent. There had been no sound, no cue, nothing to guide him. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Ethan sat quietly, oblivious, fingers tracing the plane's wings. "Ethan," she whispered, voice trembling. Did you just catch that?" He tilted his head, innocent. "It was falling. I didn't want it to break." "But how did you know?" He shrugged lightly. "I just knew it was there." The simplicity of his answer struck her harder than any proof. Clara stared at him, at those black glasses hiding whatever truth lay beneath. A shiver ran through her. Not fear, recognition. He wasn't blind, or at least, not completely. She steadied her breathing, forcing calm. "You did great, sweetheart. Really great." Ethan smiled, radiant. "See? I can help if you want to play again." Her throat tightened. "Yes, maybe later," she said softly, though her mind was spinning. Every warning, every rule, every glance from Victoria now made terrible sense. The perfection of the house, the silence, the control. It wasn't protection. It was concealment. That afternoon, while Ethan napped, Clara opened her notebook and began to write. Ethan tracks motion, catches objects accurately, responds to spatial light cues. Each line of ink deepened the pounding in her chest. She wasn't imagining it. She was seeing the edges of a truth no one wanted uncovered. When she stepped out to the balcony, the sunlight struck the glass walls, blinding, reflective, endless. The garden below was immaculate, eerily still. She inhaled, exhaled, tried to quiet her nerves, and that's when she saw it. In the reflection, just above the doorway, a tiny camera, barely visible against the ceiling trim. Her stomach turned to ice. She was being watched. Every move, every word. Clara returned quietly to Ethan's room. He was sleeping, peaceful beneath a thin blanket. She sat beside him, brushing a strand of golden hair from his forehead. Her chest tightened with a mix of fear and fierce tenderness. Whatever was happening here, she was now part of it. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling like a vow. "I'll be kind to you. I promise." He didn't stir, only breathed softly in sleep. Clara's eyes filled with something between sorrow and determination. She looked at the boy, at those hidden eyes, and murmured, barely audible, "Sometimes, blindness isn't in the eyes." The next morning, when Clara entered the room, Ethan was sitting by the window, gently touching pieces of colored paper she'd cut for him the night before. The pale light streamed through the thick glass, brushing his golden curls with a honeyed glow. The moment she stepped through the doorway, he turned toward her instantly, too quickly, too accurately. Her heart skipped. She told herself he must have heard her footsteps, but deep down, she knew better. "Good morning, Miss Clara," he said softly. "Good morning, sweetheart. What are you doing there?" I'm thinking about colors. Colors? She repeated, startled. Yes, he nodded. I don't remember all of them, but some I can still feel. Clara sat beside him. Tell me what they feel like. Ethan lifted a small red paper square and placed it on his knee. Red feels like sunlight on my face, warm and strong. Blue feels like bathwater, cool and soft. Green feels like grass under my feet, cold and smells nice. He spoke slowly, each word carrying a tenderness too deep for a child. Clara listened, frozen, as the realization began to take shape. Ethan, who taught you those things? He was silent for a moment, then whispered, No one. I remember them. I remember when my mom held me in the garden. Her dress was green. Her hair looked like sunlight. I remember her face, too. Clara felt her chest tighten painfully. According to Daniel, Ethan's mother had died when he was 2. He was supposedly born blind. He couldn't have seen her face. Yet here he was, describing color, light, and memory as vividly as any sighted child. Unless he had once been able to see. Her voice trembled. When you say you remember, Ethan, do you see it in your mind? He thought for a moment. Sometimes. When I close my eyes, it's like everything lights up. I see the sun, or the color green. But I can't tell Mrs. Victoria. She says if I talk about colors, it'll make Dad sad. The words cut through Clara like glass, softly spoken, but sharp enough to draw blood. Why would she say that? She says Daddy doesn't like to hear about Mommy, and Mommy was the last person I saw. Clara inhaled sharply, fighting to keep her composure. This child wasn't just being kept in darkness. He was being taught to fear the light. She wanted to tell him he wasn't crazy, that his memories were real, but something in her warned her to stay quiet. In this house, even walls might be listening. She stood and gently pulled back the curtains. Sunlight flooded the room, bright and golden. Ethan flinched ever so slightly, his brows twitching, his head turning away as if the brightness hurt his eyes. It was tiny, but unmistakable. Reflex. Sighted reflex. No child born blind would react like that. Clara's pulse quickened. She sat again, voice soft. Ethan, would you help me with something? What is it? I'll hold up a piece of paper, and you tell me what it feels like, okay? No peeking. Ethan smiled and nodded obediently. Clara pulled out 3 sheets, red, blue, yellow. She held up the red. What does this one feel like? Warm. And this one? Blue. Cold. And the last? Yellow. He hesitated. It feels like the sun. Clara's hands trembled. The world around her blurred for a second. This was it. The proof she didn't want but needed. The boy could see, somehow, some way. Then Ethan turned his head toward her, still wearing the dark glasses. Miss Clara, he whispered, please don't tell anyone. Mrs. Victoria will be angry. Clara took his hand and squeezed it tight. I won't. I promise. He smiled faintly and rested his head on her shoulder. So small, so fragile, and yet carrying a truth too heavy for his age. Clara wrapped her arm around him, closing her eyes. In her mind, her thoughts became a vow. No one will hurt you again. By the time the afternoon light spilled across the room, the walls glowed with a pale golden hue. Clara stood watching the sunlight dance across the glass, reflecting on Ethan's dark lenses like mirrors. And in that glimmering light, she felt it. Truth was drawing closer. That night, Clara couldn't stay still. She paced her small room on the 3rd floor, the amber lamplight trembling across the walls. On her desk lay her open notebook, The latest entry scrawled hastily. Ethan reacts to light, recognizes colors, possible visual function. She tapped her pen against the wood, thinking. Every ounce of her medical training screamed the same truth. If a child truly born blind shows light reflex, there are only two explanations. Either the diagnosis was wrong, or something had caused his blindness. She almost laughed, bitterly. Temporary blindness, absurd, and yet. Victoria's rules, the forbidden eye drops, the unlabeled amber bottle, Ethan's flinches in sunlight, they formed a pattern too precise to ignore. Clara opened the window. Night air rushed in, sharp and cold, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass. The mansion below was silent, holding its breath. Downstairs, the lights in the living room still glowed white and sterile. She knew Victoria was at one of her late-night galas, Daniel locked in his study. This was her chance. Her instincts as a nurse guided her more than reason ever could. She had to know what was in that bottle. Moving like a shadow, Clara descended the staircase. She remembered the cameras she'd spotted reflected in the glass days ago, and she navigated carefully, staying in the blind spots between pools of light. Her movements were surgical, steady, silent, deliberate. Victoria's bedroom was at the end of the hall. The doorknob was cold under her fingers. It wasn't locked. The scent of perfume hit her first, opulent, suffocating. The room was staged perfection, every object precisely placed, sterile, lifeless. Clara moved to the vanity cabinet, pushing aside creams and bottles until she found it. The amber glass vial, small, unmarked. Her pulse roared in her ears. From her pocket, she took a sterile vial, a habit left over from her nursing days, and carefully transferred a few drops of the liquid. Each movement was measured, quiet. She returned the bottle exactly as it was, checked twice, and turned to leave. Then, the hallway light flicked on. Footsteps, slow, steady, approaching. Clara froze, heart hammering. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. A voice, low, slurred slightly by wine. "Daniel, I just need my coat." The door opened. Clara pressed herself flat against the wall behind it. Her breath caught. The scent of Victoria's perfume flooded the air. She stepped in, humming under her breath, opened the vanity drawer, adjusted her hair, and for an agonizing 30 seconds, stood directly in front of the mirror. If she turned even slightly, she would see Clara. Finally, a sigh. The drawer closed. Heels clicked against the floor. The door shut again. Clara stood trembling in the dark for a long moment, then darted out, moving quickly and soundlessly back to her room. When the door closed behind her, she collapsed onto the chair, gasping for breath. In her shaking hands was the tiny vial, the liquid inside glinting under lamplight. Clear, harmless-looking, deadly, perhaps. She had to find out. The next morning, Clara made an excuse to run errands for Ethan. She tucked the vial safely in her bag. The world outside the gates felt almost unreal, too bright. Every step felt heavier, the line between nanny and investigator blurring beyond return. But her instincts, those that had once guided her through emergency wards and crying children, wouldn't let her walk away. At a small cafe near the train station, she sat in a corner booth, the smell of roasted coffee grounding her. She unlocked her phone and scrolled to a name she hadn't called in years, Dr. Laura Hensley, her closest friend, a pharmacist at her old hospital. "Laura," Clara said when the call connected, her voice low and urgent. "I need your help. I have a sample, an eye drop. I don't know what's in it, but I need you to test it, as soon as possible." There was a pause on the other end. Then Laura's voice, cautious but concerned. "Where are you? And Clara, what are you getting yourself into this time?" Clara's eyes drifted toward the window, her voice steady now. "I'm not sure, but there's a child. And if I'm right, someone's hurting him." Laura exhaled slowly. "Bring it to me. I'll run the tests. But Clara, be careful. From the way you sound, this isn't just about work anymore." Clara closed her eyes, whispering, "No. This time it's a promise." 2 days later, Clara sat in the same small cafe in Surrey, staring at a cup of cappuccino that had long gone cold. Outside, rain streaked down the windows, thin as threads. She watched the street, restless. Laura was supposed to meet her at 9. It was nearly 9:30. Every minute that passed pressed harder against her chest. If she was right, the truth inside that vial wasn't a mistake. It was a crime. When Laura finally arrived, she didn't speak. Her coat was soaked, her expression grim enough that Clara knew, whatever the answer was, it would change everything. Laura sat, opened her bag, and placed a sealed envelope on the table. No words. "What is it?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. Laura met her gaze, eyes full of pity and quiet fear. "Atropine." One word. It hit the table like a gunshot. Clara froze. "You mean atropine?" Laura nodded. "High concentration. It's sometimes used in ophthalmology, but not like this. Regular use, especially at that dosage and on a child. It dilates the pupils, blurs vision, and with prolonged exposure, it can cause permanent blindness." Clara pressed her hand over her mouth. "My God, she's poisoning him." "No," Laura said softly. "Not poisoning, controlling. The solution was compounded, not pharmacy made. Someone created it deliberately." Clara's vision blurred. She saw Ethan's small face, the black glasses, Victoria's rules. No one touches the drops. Every warning, every quiet command suddenly made perfect, horrifying sense. Laura reached for her hand. "Clara, you can't go back there. They won't let you walk away." Clara shook her head, tears spilling over. "I can't leave him, Laura. He trusts me. If I go, no one will know what's happening to him." Laura sighed, her voice low. "Then at least be careful. I'll keep a copy of the report. If something happens, I'll take it to the police." Clara nodded. When she left the cafe, the world seemed tilted, the rain whispering on her coat like a warning that she still had time. Just not much. Driving back to the Glasswood Estate, she didn't turn on the radio. The word atropine pulsed in her mind, steady and merciless. She knew what it could do. She'd learned it years ago. A few drops could cloud the eyes. Enough of it could burn away sight forever. When her Mini Cooper stopped at the gates, the rain had eased. The glass walls of the mansion glowed faintly, monstrous in the mist. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The silence inside was unnatural. Her shoes clicked softly against the marble, echoing like a heartbeat. Upstairs, she heard Daniel's voice through the half-open study door, weary, uncertain. "Yes, I understand. But Victoria, she only wants what's best for the boy." Clara froze. He knew, or at least he suspected, and he was doing nothing. She turned away before he could notice her and hurried toward Ethan's room. The boy sat on the rug, building a small house from wooden blocks. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Miss Clara, where did you go?" "I had to buy something for you," she said, forcing a smile. He nodded, content, returning to his task. "You know what? I saw lots of yellow today." The words struck her like lightning. Yellow, light, a sign of recovery. If he could still sense color, there was hope. "Where did you see it, sweetheart?" "By the window. When Mrs. Victoria opened the curtains, it was really bright, but she said not to look too long. It would make my head hurt." Clara's jaw tightened. Fury, grief, and helplessness swirled together like a storm inside her chest. She brushed his hair gently. "Ethan, do you trust me?" He nodded. "Yes." "Then you have to listen, okay? If I ever tell you to run, you run, fast. Don't look back." Ethan frowned, confused. "Why? What's wrong, Miss Clara?" She smiled through the tears that burned her eyes. "Nothing, sweetheart. I just promised to protect you." No matter what, the door creaked open behind her. A voice, sweet and venomous, filled the room. "Miss Bennett, may I ask what you're telling my son?" Clara turned slowly. Victoria Moore stood in the doorway, dressed in black, red lips gleaming like blood. Her eyes glittered, cold and knowing. Clara straightened, her voice steady. "We were talking about colors, Mrs. Moore." Victoria tilted her head, smiling, a perfect smile that never reached her eyes. "Ah, colors. How lovely. But you know, Miss Bennett, some things are better left unseen." In that moment, Clara understood. The war had begun, and this time, she couldn't afford to lose. After her meeting with Laura, hands still cold from the vial of atropine, Clara returned to the mansion with steps that felt heavier than usual. The drizzle had stopped, but the house felt washed in cold silence. She tucked the evidence into a slim folder. The lab report, her field notes from days of observation, and photographs she'd taken of Ethan's light responses. Each sheet was a small, weighted stone, but she carried them because she believed there was one thing that could crack the shell of deceit: truth. Daniel was in his study when she chose to confront him. The door stood half open. The pale glow of a monitor lit his face, magnifying the lines around his eyes. He rose when she entered, polite smile in place, but exhaustion and a guarded caution hovered behind his gaze. "Mr. Moore, I need to speak with you about Ethan," Clara began, keeping her voice steady. "I have proof." His brow rose. "Proof of what?" "You've been here less than a week, Miss Bennett. I'm not sure you have the standing to make medical claims about my son." She set the folder on his desk and slid the lab result across. "This is Laura's analysis. I took a sample from the drops Victoria uses. It contains atropine at a high concentration. Used daily on a child, it dilates the pupil, paralyzes accommodation, increases light sensitivity, and can, over time, damage the optic nerve." He read it quickly and set it down like something that burned. A flash of confusion crossed his face and then hardened into anger. "How did you get this sample? Who authorized you?" "I went into Victoria's room when she wasn't home," Clara said plainly. "I know it was a boundary to cross, but this is about a child's life." Her voice shifted from calm to urgent. "If this continues, Ethan could be blind permanently." Daniel laughed. Dry, brittle. "You're paranoid. I hired you because we needed stability, because Victoria wanted a steady presence. You've only been here a few days. You can't come in and accuse my wife of harming our son." He pushed the paper away as if denial were that simple. "We have doctors and medical records. Perhaps the Swiss specialist did examine him. You can't base accusations on a rogue test and expect me to tear my family apart." Something inside Clara cracked. All the sleepless nights, the whispers of her training, the memory of the little girl who died, collapsed into cold clarity that met Daniel's refusal. "Have you reviewed his original records?" she pressed. "They show normal vision up to age 2. Things change after Victoria arrived." He waved her off, impatient. I don't have time for conspiracies. I lost my wife, Clara. I rely on experts because I can't carry both my grief and the medical care for my child. Victoria stepped in when I needed help. If you want me to suspect the person who became my family, you need incontrovertible proof. His words were a wall. Clara stepped forward and, in a movement she barely controlled, reached out as if to touch his face, to wake him from complacency. You haven't looked into your son's eyes because you're afraid of the truth. I saw a child die once because adults hesitated. I promised that child I would not be silent again. If you don't open your eyes now, your son will never see. Her voice snapped, edged with pain. Daniel's face flushed. For a second, he seemed poised between belief and denial. Instead, he lashed out. You're insulting my family. I won't have someone drag my son away from stability. You're letting your hospital trauma color everything, thinking every oddity is abuse. You are fired. Leave this house tomorrow. His tone was stone. The blow wasn't that she'd lose her job. It was the betrayal. The father she'd hoped would be her ally siding with the abuser. Clara swallowed hard, fighting the urge to scream. You can fire me, she said, voice strained but controlled. But if you choose your wife over your son, the consequences won't stay private. I will not be silent. I will do everything to save your boy. Daniel closed his eyes a moment as if to hold back a shout, then rose. Go. Now. He refused to look at her. Clara left the room slowly, pulling courage from some deep well. In the hush outside his study, she could hear her own heartbeat pounding. The door shut behind her, and a loneliness settled on Clara like a cloak. Yet beneath that loneliness surged a cold, sharpened resolve. If the father would not see, she would bring the truth into the light herself. If she had to act alone, she would. Clara left Daniel's study with trembling legs but eyes that burned like fire beneath the surface. Back in her small room on the 3rd floor, she locked the door and sat on the edge of her bed, her head in her hands. Outside, the wind howled through rain-soaked trees, the sound like muffled sobs swallowed by the night. She knew the conversation had broken the final line of safety. Daniel would tell Victoria, and Victoria would not let her stay. Every inch of this house, every camera, every shadow, belonged to that woman. Clara had one night left to gather herself and decide her next move. The clock ticked slowly on the wall, near midnight. Clara opened her laptop, copied all her evidence, and sent the files to Laura with a short note. If I don't reach you by morning, take this to the police. She had just hit send when 3 soft knocks echoed against the door. Sharp, deliberate, cold. Her heart seized. No one ever came to her room this late. She stepped closer, hand hovering above the knob. Before she could speak, the door creaked open. Victoria Moore stood there. Gone was the elegant mask of the day. Her hair was loose, lipstick smudged, eyes glassy with wine and something darker, hatred. The heavy perfume mixed with alcohol hung thick in the air, cloying, poisonous. I knew you'd be trouble, Victoria said, voice low and slurred but sharp at the edges. From the moment you walked into this house, I saw what you were. The type who asks too many questions, who thinks compassion can fix the world. Clara's voice was steady. What have you done to Ethan? Victoria laughed, a hollow, joyless sound. Oh, you think you've uncovered the truth? You really should have stopped digging. But since you're so desperate to know, I'll tell you. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her, and sat gracefully on the chair by the desk, as if it were her own room. Ethan was supposed to die, she said calmly. He and his mother. But fate had other ideas. She died. He didn't. And because he lived, everything that should have been mine, and my son's, was taken. Clara felt a chill crawl up her spine. You mean you made him blind? Victoria's smile curved like a blade. People pity the disabled, you see. They forgive them. I couldn't kill him. Not openly. But I could make him dependent. Helpless. Weak. A child like that doesn't inherit. He becomes a burden. That's justice. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. As long as Ethan lives and thrives, Oliver will have nothing. But if Ethan's condition worsens, if his health fails, if he dies from some tragic medical complication, well, who would blame me? I'd be the grieving stepmother who did her best. Clara clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms. You're sick. He's a child. No, Miss Bennett. Victoria's voice dropped, low and venomous. He's an obstacle. And you're the threat. She moved closer, her shadow swallowing the light between them. If you interfere again, if you speak to anyone, you'll fall down the stairs or drown in the lake. Accidents happen, you know. The words hissed like steam, slicing the air. Clara stood her ground. You think I'm afraid? Victoria smirked, poured herself a glass of wine from the bottle she'd brought, and sipped. Not afraid, just foolish. You think you can fight me? I have lawyers, money, and a husband who believes me. You're a temporary employee. When you disappear, no one will ask why. Clara's throat tightened, but the fear inside her melted into something purer. Clarity. You're wrong, Victoria. I've already sent the evidence. If anything happens to me, someone will know. The smile vanished. For a second, her face twisted with rage before settling back into composure. Clever girl, she said softly, setting the glass down with a quiet clink. But clever doesn't always mean safe. Pray that I believe you. She turned toward the door, paused, and looked back over her shoulder. A word of advice, Miss Bennett, she whispered. Don't sleep too deeply tonight. Accidents come quickly to those who stay up late. The door closed, leaving the room thick with perfume and dread. Clara sat down, trembling, but her eyes were dry. Only fire remained. In that moment, she understood. The system would not save her, or Ethan. Not the police, not the father blinded by love and guilt. Only her. Only she knew the truth. She looked at her still glowing laptop screen, the light cutting across her pale face. Slowly she began to type, the first lines of a new plan. A plan to expose Victoria, to save Ethan before it was too late. The Glasswood Estate lay swallowed in darkness, but for the first time, Clara Bennett no longer feared the night. Because sometimes, to fight the devil, you have to walk straight into the dark with him. That night, after Victoria left her room, Clara didn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring into the garden drowned in darkness, the moonlight slicing across the glass like a blade. Every threat Victoria had whispered still echoed in her mind, each word a needle. But beneath the fear, a plan began to take form, slow, precise, like a heartbeat beneath the skin. If Victoria sought to control fate with poison, Clara would reclaim it with truth, quietly, patiently, without a sound. The next morning, Clara rose before dawn. Pale light crept over the Glasswood hills. In the kitchen, the servants prepared tea for Victoria, coffee for Daniel. Clara moved calmly, but her thoughts raced. Every move would have to be perfect. Ethan's eye drops were always given in the afternoon, a ritual Victoria oversaw. But lately, her charity events kept her away. That absence was the opening Clara needed. She drove into town and bought a small bottle of sterile saline solution. Same size, same amber glass. She copied the label by hand, careful to match every detail, then tucked it into her coat pocket. That afternoon, Ethan sat on the floor reading Braille when Clara entered. He turned toward her, the dark glasses reflecting a soft shimmer of light. "Is it time for my medicine, Miss Clara?" "Yes, sweetheart," she said, with a calm smile that hid her trembling hands. "But today, we'll do it gently." She opened the bottle and let a few drops fall into his eyes. "Just a little coolness. No sting this time." Ethan blinked, surprised. "It doesn't burn," he whispered. "Because today's medicine is kind," Clara murmured. She repeated the act each day, replacing Victoria's poison with harmless saline. Drop by drop, in silence, under the golden afternoon light. And then, on the third day, it happened. "Miss Clara?" Ethan's voice trembled. She turned quickly. "What is it, darling?" "I see something. Light." Clara froze. "Light." He pointed toward the window, where a single ray of sun slipped through the curtains, striking the wall. "It's bright. It hurts my eyes a little." Her knees went weak. She knelt in front of him, hands shaking as she cupped his face. "Ethan, you can see it?" "I think so. It's blurry, but it's there, like when I dream." Tears filled her eyes, but her smile was radiant. "You're doing so well, sweetheart." For the first time in weeks of darkness, Clara felt hope. Fragile, precious, but real. Over the next few days, Ethan began to see more. Shapes, shadows, movement, even the faint outline of Clara standing near the window. Each new discovery brought laughter, soft and pure, echoing through the sterile walls of the house. But joy came with danger. Every afternoon as she switched the bottles, Clara listened for footsteps, for the sound of a door opening. She knew one mistake would destroy everything. Victoria was not a fool. The woman sensed threats the way predators smelled blood. If she suspected even once, neither Clara nor Ethan would be safe. On the fifth night, Clara sat alone, staring at the half-empty saline bottle. She knew she couldn't protect Ethan forever on her own. She needed an ally. There was only one person left, Daniel Moore. He had doubted her. He had chosen denial, but he was still a father. If he saw Ethan's sight returning with his own eyes, he'd have no choice but to believe. Clara took out a small piece of paper and began to write, her hand trembling but resolute. "If you want the truth, come to Ethan's room at sunset. A child is learning to see again what the adults once stole from him." She folded the note and slipped it into the book Daniel read every evening in the library. Then she left the room, her pulse racing. In the hallway, Victoria's figure appeared, black dress sweeping softly across the marble. She looked at Clara, smiling faintly, the kind of smile that freezes the air. Clara met her gaze without flinching, then turned away. Inside, she knew there was no turning back. She would save Ethan, even if it cost her everything. The next afternoon, sunlight shimmered against the glass walls of the Glasswood Estate, and for the first time, the silence didn't suffocate Clara. Ethan was napping. Victoria was out meeting her lawyer. It was the perfect window, brief, fragile, but enough. She needed help. Someone inside, someone who already doubted Victoria. Only one name came to mind: Emma Shaw, Daniel Moore's longtime assistant. Quiet, discreet, loyal only to Daniel. Or so Clara hoped. She'd noticed the way Emma's eyes hardened whenever Victoria entered a room. Contempt, hidden behind professionalism. Clara found her in the small office beside the boardroom, surrounded by towering stacks of files. Emma looked up, startled. "Miss Bennett? You shouldn't be here." "I know," Clara said, closing the door softly. "But I need your help. It's about Ethan." The boy's name made Emma freeze. She removed her glasses, eyes wary. "What do you know about him?" Clara laid an envelope on the desk. Lab reports, notes, photos. "I know he's not blind. I have proof. And I believe Victoria is involved." Silence. The ticking of the old clock filled the room like a countdown. Finally, Emma stood, drew the curtains, and locked the door. "I've thought the same," she whispered. "But I've never had proof. Victoria changed all of Ethan's medical records 3 years ago. Daniel never questioned it." "Are the originals still here?" Clara asked quickly. Emma hesitated. "If they exist, they're in the safe in his office. I have a spare key. But if I'm caught, I'm finished." Clara leaned forward. "If we don't act, that child will lose his sight forever." A long pause, then Emma nodded, voice firm. "Tonight, when they're asleep, meet me upstairs. I'll open it." Midnight came. The house lay silent beneath silver moonlight. Clara's heart pounded as she crept through the corridor. When she reached the office, Emma was already there, dressed in black, her face pale but determined. The safe was hidden behind a large wedding portrait of Daniel and Victoria. Emma slid the frame aside and fitted the key into the lock. Her hand shook slightly, but the metal clicked open with a soft sigh. Inside were 3 blue folders. Emma pulled one out and handed it to Clara. All of Ethan's medical files. Clara flipped through the first few pages. Ethan Moore. Vision test, normal. Light reflex, present. Age, 24 months. Her pulse quickened. The next section told a different story. The diagnosis of congenital blindness appeared a full year later, signed by Dr. Adrian Cole. Clara's stomach turned. "Dr. Cole, I've heard that name." Emma nodded grimly. "Victoria's cousin lost his medical license for falsifying prescriptions and patient records. She brought him here to make it official." Clara's grip tightened on the file. "She built a lie, and the world believed it." Emma lowered her voice. "I saw Daniel sign papers she handed him while he was drinking. I thought it was charity documents. I didn't know." Clara began laying the pages neatly across the desk, photographing each one. "We'll make a complete record. No one can bury this again." Emma watched her, then said softly, "I'll help you. I cared for that boy like my own. You're not alone anymore." The words struck Clara deeply. For the first time in weeks, she felt the warmth of solidarity amid the cold fear. They worked until nearly 3 a.m, organizing, copying, sealing. When it was done, Emma glanced at the clock. "Daniel will be home all morning tomorrow. If there's ever a time to make him believe, it's then." Clara nodded, slipping the files into her bag. "Tomorrow, the truth comes out." As they left the office, the corridor was eerily still. Then came a sound. Slow, heavy footsteps from below. They froze. Victoria appeared on the staircase, wrapped in a black silk gown, a wine glass in hand, her expression calm but predatory. "Can't sleep, Miss Bennett?" she asked sweetly, her voice gliding through the dark like silk. Clara bowed her head slightly. "No, just couldn't rest." "Careful," Victoria said, swirling her wine. "In the dark, it's easy to stumble." She glided past, her perfume lingering like poison. When she was gone, Emma exhaled, whispering, "Tomorrow." We can't wait any longer." Clara nodded, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She knew the line between safety and ruin had thinned to a breath, and when the sun rose, there would be no more hiding. Dawn spread softly over the Glasswood hills, a veil of silver mist wrapping the estate. Clara had barely slept. Inside her, calm and fire warred silently. Today, Daniel Moore would see with his own eyes that his son was not blind, and nothing could hide the truth anymore. Emma had delivered the original medical files at dawn. The pages were yellowed, fragile, heavy with the weight of honesty. Clara read the words again under the pale light. Ethan Moore, perfect vision, age, 24 months. She took a deep breath, resting her hand on the file like a silent vow, then stepped out of her room, carrying faith and fear together. At 8 o'clock, the first sunlight streamed through the glass-paneled hall, flooding the room with golden warmth. Clara led Ethan into the main lounge where the windows opened wide to the gardens. The light filled everything, gentle, bright, almost sacred. Ethan sat on the carpet, clutching his teddy bear. "Miss Clara, why is the room so bright today?" She smiled, her heart tightening. "Because today's special, sweetheart. Today you'll see something you never thought you could." She knelt down, gently removing the dark glasses from his face. "Now, look toward the window, Ethan." Light touched his eyes. He flinched at first, squinting, but then slowly opened them again. His pupils shrank. They reacted. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Miss Clara," his voice quivered. "I see something, moving. The light, it's dancing." Clara's tears fell freely. "Yes, darling. That's sunlight. You're seeing it." A soft sound came from behind. Daniel entered, coffee cup in hand, fatigue in his posture. He started to speak but stopped cold. His son was staring toward the window, eyes open, full of golden light. "Ethan," Daniel whispered. The boy turned. For the first time, their eyes met. Time froze. "Dad," Ethan stammered, "I can see you." The cup slipped from Daniel's fingers and shattered on the floor. He stepped closer, as if afraid to breathe too loud. Kneeling, his trembling hands cupped his son's face. "You can really see me?" "Yes," Ethan laughed through tears. "Your eyes are gray, just like Mom said." Daniel's face crumpled. The years of denial, excuses, and blind trust collapsed in an instant. He turned to Clara, voice breaking. How is this possible?" Clara opened the file, placing it on the table before him. "Because your son was never blind. Here, his original medical records. Perfect vision until age 2. Then a forged diagnosis, signed by Dr. Adrian Cole, Victoria's cousin, stripped of his license for falsifying records. I have the proof." Daniel flipped through the papers, his eyes widening with each line, each date, each false signature. "No. Victoria said the Swiss doctors—" "There were no Swiss doctors," Clara interrupted, her voice trembling but firm. "She's been using atropine at toxic levels. It causes temporary blindness. I replaced her drops. Within days, his sight began to return. You can verify it with any ophthalmologist." Daniel dropped the file as if it burned. He turned back to his son, who was now gazing around the room, eyes bright and alive, seeing everything for the first time. "Oh God," Daniel murmured, covering his face. "She did this to him?" Clara didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence was enough. Tears slid down Daniel's cheeks. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled not with anger, but gratitude and grief. "Thank you. Without you, I would have left my son in the dark forever." Clara shook her head, her own eyes glistening. I only did what you should have done from the beginning. Look. A still, fragile peace filled the room. Morning sunlight streamed through the glass, bathing father and son in gold. Ethan laughed, a sound pure and light like the dawn itself. Emma entered quietly, holding a large envelope. I've copied everything, she said. If you want, I'll call the police now. Daniel's voice was rough. No, we'll do this right. I'll talk to them myself. Clara exhaled, the weight easing off her chest. Yet beneath the calm, she felt it. The storm hadn't passed. Victoria would not go quietly. Outside, the crunch of tires on gravel broke the silence, the unmistakable sound of the black Mercedes. Clara looked toward the window, heart tightening. She's back, she whispered. Emma gripped the envelope tighter. Daniel turned to his son, resolve hardening in his face. Then it's time, he said softly, to let the light reach the places it was never allowed to shine. The sound of the Mercedes echoed down the stone driveway. Clara's heart tightened with every beat. Victoria was home. The golden light in the living room suddenly felt sharp, almost electric. Daniel stood beside his son, gripping the folder tightly. Emma waited by the door, clutching the envelope of evidence. Clara said nothing, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire that could no longer be contained. The sharp click of heels rang down the hall. Click, click, click. Measured, confident, lethal. The door opened. Victoria Moore stepped inside, immaculate in her black dress, hair perfectly curled as if nothing had happened. But the moment her gaze fell upon the room, Daniel, Clara, Emma, and Ethan bathed in sunlight. Her smile froze. What's going on? She asked softly, voice smooth as glass. Daniel turned, his eyes colder than she'd ever seen. Victoria, we need to talk. She set her purse on the chair and removed her sunglasses. Of course, but first, who opened my safe? No one spoke. The silence was suffocating. Daniel stepped forward, holding up the file. I read it, every word. Ethan was never blind. Color drained from Victoria's face, but her lips curved in a brittle smile. Daniel, who filled your head with this nonsense? Her? She glanced at Clara, her tone dripping with disdain. You'd believe a hired nanny over your wife? I don't believe her, Daniel said, his voice low but unshakable. I saw my son see me, see the world, and I saw that you lied to us all. Victoria took half a step back, eyes flashing. You're insulting me. No, Daniel replied. You insulted our son, and my faith. He threw the file onto the table. These are the real records, signed by a legitimate doctor. And these, he pointed to the forged pages, by Adrian Cole, your cousin, who lost his license for fraud. Victoria shook her head and laughed coldly. You don't understand. I did this to protect him. He's fragile. He needed my care. I did what was right. Right? Clara stepped forward, voice trembling with fury. You poisoned him with atropine, blinded him, and called it love. That's not protection. That's cruelty. Victoria spun toward her, eyes blazing. How dare you? Enough! Daniel's voice boomed, sharp as thunder. Ethan flinched and clung to Clara. You think I didn't notice? I have your prescriptions, your bank transfers to Adrian. The police will have everything. A flicker of fear crossed Victoria's face. Brief, but real. Then she laughed, high and wild. You fool. You think they'll believe you? I'm your wife. My name is on everything. Your company, your property. You've already lost. Daniel looked her dead in the eye. Maybe, but at least I'm not blind anymore. The words struck her like a blade. Her expression faltered. Before she could reply, sirens wailed outside. Emma had called the police. Clara held Ethan's hand tightly. "It's all right, sweetheart. It's almost over." He squeezed back, whispering, "The light today is so pretty." When the officers entered, Victoria straightened, regaining her poise. "This is a misunderstanding," she said smoothly. "I'll call my lawyer." Daniel handed them the file. "You won't need to. It's all here. Evidence that she's been poisoning our son for 3 years. I'll give a full statement." The officer nodded. Another read her rights. Victoria's expression stayed composed, but her hands trembled. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the sunlit room, and suddenly the space felt larger, freer. Victoria turned her head toward Clara, eyes burning. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "People like you always believe they're heroes. The world doesn't reward goodness, you know." Clara met her gaze steadily. Maybe not, but it saved a child. The officers led Victoria down the hall. Her heels struck the marble rhythmically, each step fading until there was only silence. Daniel sank to his knees and pulled Ethan into his arms. The boy placed his hand on his father's cheek and whispered, "Dad, I can see. Everything's so bright." Daniel wept, not with guilt, but with release. Clara turned toward the window. The morning sun poured in, golden and full. The glass walls shimmered, and for the first time, the Glasswood Estate didn't feel cold. Emma came beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We did it." Clara smiled faintly. "No," she said softly. "He did it. He found his light again." Outside, the police car rolled down the driveway, carrying the darkness away with it. And for the first time in years, laughter, Ethan's pure, innocent laughter, filled the house like a song welcoming the dawn. 3 months after Victoria's arrest, spring returned to the Glasswood Hills. The skies were clear, the grass alive and green, and the once silent mansion now echoed with laughter, birdsong, and sunlight spilling through every window. The Glasswood case had made national headlines. Victoria Moore was sentenced to 12 years in prison for child endangerment, deliberate poisoning, and medical fraud. Dr. Adrian Cole, her accomplice, lost his license permanently and faced criminal charges for falsifying medical records. The evidence was irrefutable, and both pled guilty in court. Daniel attended every hearing, sitting quietly in the front row, often holding his son's small hand as witnesses spoke. When the verdict was announced, he didn't feel triumph, only sorrow and relief. After years of blindness, he finally saw everything clearly: truth, light, and the cost of looking away. Clara sat in the back of the courtroom, silent, her eyes drawn to the light pouring through the tall windows onto Ethan's calm face. The boy could see now, his blue eyes bright and fearless. Life slowly found its rhythm again. Ethan began vision therapy in London with a pediatric ophthalmologist. Each week, he practiced identifying shapes, colors, and distance. Clara often accompanied him, sitting outside the room, smiling as he shouted colors through the door. "Miss Clara," he'd call. "I know this one. Yellow, like the sun in our garden." Clara laughed, tears glinting. "That's right, sweetheart. Just like the sun you saw that first morning." Meanwhile, Daniel poured himself into redemption. He sold part of his company and founded the Ethan Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting children from medical abuse and malpractice. He personally visited hospitals and foster homes, reading stories to children and funding pediatric medical equipment. At the foundation's opening ceremony, Daniel spoke slowly, every word carrying the weight of truth. Terrible things don't only happen in darkness. Sometimes they happen in plain sight, when we choose not to see. The Ethan Foundation exists so no child will ever live in darkness because an adult looked away. Clara watched the live broadcast from her university dorm. Yes, university. She had returned to medical school, funded entirely by Daniel, though she'd refused at first. Not because I owe you, he'd told her, but because you deserve to keep saving lives. She chose forensic pediatrics, a rare specialty that blends medicine and justice. She wanted to learn how to read the silent signs others missed. Every time she opened a textbook, she remembered her promise whispered in the dark. I won't stay silent again. A year later, on her graduation day, Daniel and Ethan were there. Ethan was 7 now, lively and full of wonder. He ran to Clara, beaming. Guess what, Miss Clara? I made you something. He pulled a folded drawing from his backpack. On the paper, a brown-haired woman stood in a garden of flowers beside a smiling little boy holding a ball. Above them, a huge golden sun radiated across the page. At the bottom, written in wobbly, childlike letters, Miss Clara, you gave me the whole world. Clara laughed and cried all at once, hugging him tightly. In that moment, she understood. It wasn't justice or victory that mattered most. It was kindness. Kindness had been the light that saved them all. Outside, the summer sky blazed gold. Church bells rang softly in the distance. Daniel watched them from a few steps away, his vision blurred with tears, but his smile clear. He knew that from this day on, the Glasswood Estate would never again belong to darkness. It would be the home of something better, healing. And somewhere within that sunlight, Ethan's laughter rose again, pure, bright, and eternal. The sound of a child who had found his light, and of a woman who had walked through darkness to bring it back. A year later, the Glasswood Estate was unrecognizable. Heavy drapes were gone, replaced by sunlight. The cold paintings had given way to children's drawings. Piano notes drifted down the hall each afternoon. The mansion that once embodied fear now breathed laughter, light, and life. Clara stood on the upstairs balcony, looking down at the garden. Lavender bloomed in gentle waves of purple. Ethan ran beneath the sun, chasing a yellow butterfly, his laughter chiming through the air. Daniel sat on a stone bench nearby, camera in hand, capturing every moment. Every time Ethan turned and laughed, Daniel laughed too. The kind of laugh Clara once thought she'd never hear from him again. She walked down with a cup of tea. Daniel looked up, squinting against the sun. I think he's winning, he said, nodding toward Ethan. That butterfly doesn't stand a chance. Clara smiled, setting the cup on the table. I don't think he's chasing it, she said softly. I think he's just happy to see it. Daniel fell silent, eyes on his son. You know, he said after a moment, I still wonder sometimes, if you hadn't come to this house, if you hadn't asked those questions. Clara interrupted gently. Someone else would have, eventually. No, Daniel said, shaking his head. I don't believe that. You had the courage to look where everyone else looked away. You saved my son, and you saved me. Clara smiled faintly. Maybe Ethan saved us all. He never stopped believing there was light, even when everyone told him it didn't exist. Daniel nodded. Sunlight glinted through the tea glass, scattering golden reflections across the table. Funny, he said quietly. Everything that once broke me now feels like something to be grateful for. They watched as Ethan caught the butterfly, but instead of keeping it, he opened his hand and let it go. The golden wings shimmered as it soared upward, vanishing into the clear blue sky. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "That's Ethan," she whispered. "He never holds on to what belongs to the light." Later that afternoon, they sat in the living room, now warm and full of life. A new photo hung on the wall. Daniel and Ethan laughing together, Clara beside them, holding the drawing Ethan once gave her. "You gave me the whole world." Daniel looked at it thoughtfully. "I think it's time for a new beginning," he said. "The Ethan Foundation is growing. I want you to lead the medical program, to train teams to identify and protect children like him." Clara stared at him. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain," he said with a gentle smile. "No one understands the light better than someone who's walked through darkness." The words sank deep. Clara thought back to her first night in this house. The flawless perfection, the uneasy silence, the feeling that something was wrong. Now the same walls glowed with peace. That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Clara stepped onto the porch. The moon hung high, reflecting on the still lake. Daniel joined her with a thin blanket. "You'll get cold," he said. She smiled. "Thank you." They sat in silence, comfortable and calm. Between them was a quiet understanding, the bond of two people who had both lost faith and found it again. After a while, Daniel said softly, "Tomorrow I'm taking Ethan to the orphanage in town. There's a boy there who's blind. Ethan wants to give him his old sunglasses, said, 'Maybe one day the light will find you too.' He believes it, so the boy does too." Clara smiled, eyes glistening. "The world needs more people like him." Daniel nodded. "And people like you, to remind us that sometimes seeing isn't about opening your eyes, it's about opening your heart." They sat there, saying nothing more. In the distance, the town lights shimmered across the lake like 1,000 tiny stars. Clara closed her eyes, breathing in the calm night air, and for the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. Behind them, the clock chimed midnight. A new day began, a dawn of light, faith, and kindness.